Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Welcome everybody. It's there's something that always feels so different about being the person who's sitting here as people come in than being one of the people who kind of slides in. So I'm just really appreciating that kind of difference and feeling a lot of warm heart connection in seeing people arriving. So we're just going to sit together for 15 minutes, however that invitation strikes you at this point, just to maybe check what feels habitual. You know, do you have a little habit of how you sit? What would it be like to sit as though it was the very first time? Just sitting. So please join with me in saying the verse of the robe. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. I've just managed to shrink my notes to almost nothing, so that's going to be an interesting thing. Last week, Josh was talking about presence and inviting us into intimacy and not knowing, and we so often use that quote about not knowing is most intimate. And it's something that sits really close to my heart, that particular story and quote, because of my own addiction to knowing and having to constantly step back from that addiction. And I'm still quite likely to Google something that I really don't need to know. It's like, where is that actor now? You know, don't do that. It's like, why? But what I'd like to do is kind of really explore this sense of what happens inside us. Why, not why, but how leaning into not knowing might be a gateway to freedom. So the exchange comes from a koan from the Book of Serenity. I think it's case 20. And it's a very short exchange, as many of these things are, little kind of snapshots of something that can continue to echo down and really support us to keep practicing, to keep finding ways to wake up. So the koan is Dijang's not knowing. So Dijang asked Feizan, where are you going? And Feiyan answered, around on pilgrimage. No Google Maps, no what 3 words, you know, just like, I'm going off on pilgrimage. And Dijang then asked, what's the purpose of pilgrimage? What's the purpose of pilgrimage? And Feiyan replied, I don't know. So I'm going off on this thing, and I don't know why I'm going. I possibly don't even quite know where I'm going. And Dijang said, not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate. And if someone said to you, you know, what's the purpose of your work? You know, what's the purpose of giving a Dharma talk? What's the purpose of your hobby, of your relationships, of your life? Could you answer with confidence? I don't know. Not from a place of insecurity, not like, oh, I don't know, but like, I don't know. I don't know because I won't know what happens from here, from this moment. I can sort of know a little bit about what's happened, but I don't know what's going to happen, what's going to unfold. And so recently, one of my dear friends, a lovely Irish woman who embodies that kind of certain kind of Gaelic poetic nature, She's a beautiful lyrical person. And she described an encounter with a loose bull in an enclosed lane on her country walk. And she summed it up by naming it. Her post was named "When Fear Meets Cluelessness Surrounded by Beauty." I thought, well, that'll do for my life. I'm having that one on my gravestone. When fear meets cluelessness, surrounded by beauty. And I just thought that was so perfect. Clueless and fearful, and yet also being completely awake to the beauty of life and just not knowing what the next steps are. So she stopped in the lane, knowing that she wanted to get to where the bull, her name's Tara Hines, she's a wonderful woman, and she knew she needed to get past the bull to get to her destination, because she too was on a kind of pilgrimage. She was looking for a holy well on one of the islands in Ireland. And the lane had kind of these really high stone walls that, if you've ever been in the UK, you would know them. Dry stone walls, really high, but they were also topped with a kind of like wire. So there was no way to kind of hop over a wall or sidle past the bull. So she just stopped. And she filmed the countryside in which she was standing. She just showed us this beautiful landscape in which this encounter between a wandering loose bull, no farmer in sight, and herself. I was really touched. And at that point, did I know what happened and how it was resolved? No, I didn't. And whilst I was assuming, as she'd posted it, she survived the encounter, that's not what kind of really interested me. I thought, what I want to pay attention to is the way that this sort of encounter between bull and person, and Dijang and Feian, really echo that question of where are you going? And how are you going to get there? What pilgrimage are you on today? You know, this day, right now, even if you're sitting still, like, what pilgrimage are you on? And so I'm really curious about how we traverse the path we are on. You know, we're oftentimes, I don't know about you, I mean me, I'm oftentimes caught between fear and cluelessness, and often stopped by beauty. You know, I'm looking out of the window now at the different layers of leaves that are outside my house, and I live opposite a car park. And there's cars, but there's also this beautiful layered leaf going on. And it seems to me that one of the places of freedom that we might have, one of the compass points to freedom, is our allowing ourselves to stay rooted in not knowing quite who we are, having ideas, not quite knowing what we're up to or where we're going, or much more often how it's going to go. We don't know how what we're doing is going to unfold in time. And I think it was Memorial Day there in the States, you know, a day that's traditionally to mourn military personnel who've died in the service of their country. And Heather Cox Richardson, you know, such an exquisite, inestimable, wise writer, wrote about someone, and some of you may, if you follow her posts, you will have read the story, that she talked about someone that she was aware of when she'd been growing up, the brother of a friend's mother who had died in the Second World War. And as I read the piece, you know, something about the lives we live and the way that they keep rippling through time and appear and things happen that we will never know about. Things that we've said or done, or some action that we've taken, and those ripples just kind of go on and we don't know about them. So she was talking about this person that she'd known who died in the war, and the deep thread that just carries on rippling through time. And she wrote, I first wrote about Bo when his sister passed, for it felt to me like another kind of death, that with his sisters now all gone, along with almost all of their friends, soon there would be no one left who would even remember his name, which is something that'll happen to all of us. At some point, there won't be people who remember who we are. She says, but something amazing happened after I wrote about him. People started visiting Bo's grave, leaving flowers and sending pictures of the cross that bears his name. And now, in anticipation of Memorial Day, people have asked me once again to repost his story. Bo now lives for some people who've never met him, and he would have been amazed at any of it. Social media, dying and being buried in England, having his sister talk about him in such a way that Heather was impacted, and now people visiting his grave. An extraordinary ripple through time. So that person who died at 20 is now remembered and honoured by people he could never imagine. And it's the same for our lives. You know, do you imagine that the Buddha thought in 2,500 years there's going to be a bunch of people all over the world studying, talking, thinking about this, trying to live lives with more freedom in them? And I was thinking how much of that is in my life. You know, in the room I'm sitting in, we have a painting that belonged to Josh's family, and it's a portrait of someone I'll never meet. And it's on the wall, and it faces the portrait of another person who I'll never meet. And yet I've lived with them now for a really long time, which also means I've lived with the artist's work. The artist who'll never know that he's living in my front room, she's living in my front room with me. And they enrich my life. And they won't know. And when I'm curious about when we can rest and trust that however much we want to know, mostly we won't. Mostly we won't know the result of our lives. But it's not an invitation to be actionless, because we won't know. It's much more for me an invitation to say, how much can I stay rooted in the precepts, rooted in a kind of like a sense of what is ethical and kind, connection and behavior, and then to allow whatever needs to happen to arise in spaciousness. So when I was not knowing about this sort of most intimate moment between the bull and my friend Tara walking, I was thinking about that, how often we meet obstacles in the road and we don't know how to get past them, and we don't know what's going to happen, and we might turn back. We might think there's no way forward with this, you know, I have to give up on wherever I'm going, or I have to let fear decide what I do. So she then, several days later, posted the follow-up. So, like all good stories, we do have a bit of the next chapter of her encounter with the bull. She said, the bull and I shared sweet connection, and I released my fear into the earth we were both stood upon. The bull and I shared a sweet connection, and after I released my fear into the earth, we were both stood upon. And I thought, what an amazing response, you know. What would it be like in each moment when we feel that sense of stopping, or being held back, or just fear coming up with that sense of like, I don't know what to do here. That we could just acknowledge whatever's happening, it's happening on the earth we share. It's happening in the shared breath, the shared air we breathe. And I thought that, in these turbulent and troubled and genuinely, understandably fearful times, we can all feel how fear makes us want to contract or close down or agitate us, or, whichever normal way your nervous system responds to fear. We'll all have a particular thing we do, variety of things we do. What would it be like to just stop, meeting it from the shared place, our shared place on this planet, however polarized we feel at this moment? And she says, this bull took my breath away because we eyeballed each other. They looked at each other straight. He knew I was afraid, and I knew in my brain he was really harmless. And I let the part of my body that was nervous do its thing, tremble, release, let go. And I remembered I wasn't alone. So in that fearful place, what happens if we let our fear move, arise, come through us, and then deeply remember we're not alone, because we can't be? What happens when we do that? She says, within seconds, the bull turned in the direction that I was going, and the two of us walked together, carefree. I cried. After I asked the bull permission to pass, he nodded and gave me the most beautiful smile from his eyes. I thanked him and really had to almost pinch myself to feel this bull by my side, strolling along the path towards the sea together. It's a moment to think about, isn't it? Walking with your fear, walking along, releasing your fear and just keeping moving. She says, my original intention was to find the ancient healing well that the people in the past had visited for healing. I didn't need to find it. I didn't need to find it. The whole island was healing. Each animal I met gave me what felt like a blessing in simply connecting, communicating with me, like Gabriel and the angels do daily. And remembering that we're not alone in whatever form that takes for you. For her, for my friend, it's her angels. For me, it's knowing that I'm here. I'm here because of everything else that's happened. I'm here because there is no here without me in it at the moment. And there's no me here without everything else. Barry Magid said, paradoxically, the longer we practice, the less we're able to answer the basic question that brought us to practice in the first place. But we are more able to endure their mystery. The mystery of not knowing what to do, the mystery of not knowing how to proceed, and just thinking, I'll take the next step. I was so encouraged by that. I was so encouraged. And last week I went to an exhibition at the British Museum in London, and it was called Ancient India Living Traditions, and it was about reaching back more than 2,000 years to the origins of Hinduism, Jainism and Buddhism. So it was looking at how those three had kind of intersected and woven together. Was looking specifically at the iconography of it all, but it really, what came to me from being in that exhibition was, nothing starts from nowhere. It's a really obvious thing to say. I apologize for its obviousness, but it was kind of like standing in the middle of that exhibition. It was like, the iconography that was already there in Hinduism, the deities, the wood spirits, the natural spirits that were being worshipped were just completely woven in. It was just that. Nothing starts. Nothing finishes. And here we are, 2,500 years later, practicing in a way that the Buddha would not recognize. Nothing about our lives apart from the fact that life has suffering, has relationships, has connection and disconnection, and joy and loss and sorrow. You'd recognize that, but not the context or the way that we're living. So I was really touched by that kind of exhibition, and I was thinking about how in our sitting practice, the more we can kind of let go of our contracted sense of self, which is often really there out of fear, out of protection, out of needing to get it right, whatever it is. Just as that softens, there's so much more freedom in not knowing. Yo-Yo Ma, the beautiful cellist, was talking about how he'd found a way into a piece of music, the prelude from Bach's cello suite number 1, and it felt like he'd found a way in, and there was something about the way he phrased it that really felt like it chimed with this sense for me of this flowing into your life. He said, "I spent decades trying to get the piece right." Imagine that. Someone who we think is doing it right. For him, it's like decades trying to get this piece right. At some point, I found a way in the same way that a river begins far before we meet it. I imagine this music started long before I play the first note. I just have to join it. Like the river before me, the music is always flowing, and like the river, it's always changing. All I have to do is picture a river, feel the energy get into the flow, and follow it. What happens? What happens if you did that? If you imagined life as this endless, unending flow, long before you're here and long after you're here, and we just get in. We just allow ourselves to be there and flow with everything that was already there. Parker Palmer said, "Your life was never the solo turn it seemed to be. It was always part of the great weave of nature and humanity, an immensity we come to know only as we follow our own small threads to the place where they merge with the boundless whole. Each of the threads runs its course, then joins in life together. This magnificent tapestry, this masterpiece in which we live forever." So I'd be really happy to meet with anybody who is interested or has some curiosity or just something they'd like to say, to meet in the endless flow of life. Marla.
Hi, Trudy.
Hi, Marla.
Thank you so much. I was so touched by your mention of Memorial Day here in the US because yesterday, somewhere online, someone posted in Flanders Field that famous poem about World War I that we probably all read in high school poetry. And it just brought to mind the stanza that says, "We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field." And I don't think any of us would have probably ever read that poem if the writer had said, you know, we woke up every morning terrified,
Yeah,
pondering the worst case scenario.
yeah,
And, between fear and cluelessness is sometimes the worst case scenario, and focusing on that, even if we're at war,
yeah,
what's the point if we wake up and we don't see the sunrise and the sunset? I just felt really touched by how that all came together, and I'm grateful. And I'm going to use those words between fear and cluelessness for everything now.
It's just great. I was like, you have written my Dharma talk. Thank you very much. I couldn't take
Thank you so
it.
much.
And it is, isn't it, though, to have the space to actually see what else is there. Because there's always something else there.
Right. The best case scenario.
Yeah.
The in-between scenario.
In between.
Who cares? Who knows?
Absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you.
I can see Sue. There you are.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Trudy. The idea of the just going along, I don't know, kind of thing, and aging is much like that. You just go along, and now and then you sort of check and you say, "Yep, we're doing pretty well here."
Yeah.
And you just go along, and then changes happen, and then stuck.
Yeah.
Between the fear and the cluelessness.
Yeah.
And it's just, as I'm sitting here looking outside out my window at the beauty out there, I just find myself going, whew, and
Yeah.
paying attention, and the idea of being this river goes along, and that's life, and we just step in here, and we won't be here forever, and it's all okay.
Yeah.
And we can just, we aren't alone. We have people we're traveling with, and we have our sanghas, and we have, today, and all these things. And so it was helping me putting things in a little better perspective.
Yeah. So there is something about that, we do get stuck, and things, are painful, and the losses that accrue around aging aren't necessarily a bunch of fun.
That's right.
That it can be tough. And somehow, it feels like our vow is to stay awake to it all.
Yeah.
To make, to between us and in us, make the container big enough to say, we were meeting today with our lovely friend Catherine, who comes to this Sangha, who's mourning a deep loss at the moment. And it's like, and we still met and enjoyed. She got some flowers, which were lovely. And, it's like, how do we keep doing that? Take the moment. Look out at your window.
Look out the window and breathe.
And it's a privilege to have an aging body. Many people don't get to have one.
It sure is.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. It's Becky.
Am I really on?
You're really on.
Thank you so much for this. It not only has something to do that's about not knowing, that I've been enjoying with a couple of my friends here in the assisted living. And, I try not to do too much in terms of this is, Buddhist stuff that I'll tell you about, but I couldn't help it with not knowing. It really felt right to share. And my gosh, not only, we've talked about it a lot, but also we laughed together a huge amount, because one or the other of us can say either I don't know or we don't know. And almost always the second person does say, we don't know, and it's just delightful. And she's 86, and we laugh about a lot of things, but this has helped. And she said to me very directly, and I hadn't said it, she says, it is so freeing. And she just got that totally in herself now. So anyway, I just wanted to say how that was good. And also this morning, after the meditation, the morning meditation with the Austin folks, I felt something going off of me, something that wasn't comfortable and was going off, like dripping off of me, sort of kind of thing. Because my friend Alan is dying, and we've spent quite a lot of time while he's gone through significant things and so on. But over the last few weeks, he started being the person he wanted to be, or trying to do that, and try to, and it's completely different than the fella I met 3 years ago. And I can't go along with, almost like I can't participate fully in almost anything that he's talking about. And it took me, I got it mentally, but it took me several days emotionally to recognize this is what he needs to do for himself. This is his way of feeling the dignity that his disease has given him, what he's felt as indignity. And so it took me a little while to recognize that I was grieving before he's gone, which I've been doing at a level that felt right, which is that I've known him for a number of years, and in this intensive time, I recognize that I am grieving. I am, it's about my loss when I'm feeling it, and trying not to put that out when I'm with him, rather than let it be with me when I'm not with him. It's like to recognize that and be compassionate and stuff. But all of that just completely fell off of me in a way that I feel lighter. And I don't know, it may come back at me within the next few weeks or whatever, but
I think you raised a really interesting thing, though. It's like, I really get the compassion. I don't want to give him my grief because it's my loss. And there's a part of me that thinks it's really important people know they matter, and I'm going to be brokenhearted. So what are we protecting them from? When are we protecting them from maybe a kind of, feeling like I'm taking it away from them, but can we say it matters, and I'm going to miss you? Because you are.
yes.
And I think that's one of the fears we have of loving and being loved.
It is. When I would never step away from them.
Yeah.
That's where that beauty is also.
Absolutely.
What was the actual phrase about beauty at the end?
The one about fear and cluelessness?
Yes. What was the phrase about?
When fear and cluelessness are surrounded by beauty. I think I'll find it and I'll put it in the chat. But I think people are agreeing. I think it's that. Or meet beauty. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you so much.
I'm sort of laughing at myself because I'm thinking, oh, but I don't know what I'm going to say. And
Oh,
I was
thank
like,
God.
I was like,
don't
well,
know.
that'll be okay. Whirling with some very deep experiences of what you've offered us. And I'm really jealous of Tara, but I also feel now like I almost feel like I've had that experience. And I can feel that electrical current of fear, of that moment of recognizing, oh, this is a moment.
This is a moment.
And it's intimately connected with this other being. And I am clueless.
Yeah.
Except that because it's intimately connected with this other being, the connection actually shifts what it is. Shifting from fear, for example, to we are two beings on the same ground, shifts, I'm imagining, also the bull in his experience of who I am and what's happening and why. I mean, and I thought about what Marla was talking about, all the different case scenarios. And I thought actually there's something really miraculous about embracing, and I don't know what the worst case scenario is. I'm aware that I actually never know what that means.
Yeah.
But surrendering to whatever is I mean, I can feel in my body that is the ultimate liberation. Like, what can anyone do to you once you've surrendered?
So like right now, in your body right now, feeling that, this is freedom. It's not an imagined place somewhere else.
Mm.
It's not with a different life.
And I think knowing that we don't know, like remembering that we don't know, is waking up.
Yeah.
Because when we think we know, we just talk. We don't listen. Right? Because we know.
Yeah. And we shut
And
down.
then I think of the eye contact with the bull, and I realize the bull doesn't have a story. The bull has a question. What now? Who, and it's decided between us. And
We'll walk,
that's being fully, sorry?
we'll walk together.
Yeah, yes, that was so beautiful. Oh my God. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Trudy. I get plenty of not knowing from my practice itself. I had to euthanize a cat last week. She had cancer and went down. Her end came very, very fast. If I hadn't had her euthanized at that point that she would have died on her own within an hour. And so that, even though I'd known for, I guess, 3 months that she had cancer, that happened so fast that it hit hard.
Yeah.
I've walked with a lot of animals through their last days and hours, and it's always followed a pretty predictable pattern. I know what the last days are like, and then after the animal dies, usually I have about 3 weeks of grief and being with that before I feel ready to start moving on, and getting rid of possessions and food that only that cat eats. And Lovey was my cat. Lovey was euthanized 5 days ago, Thursday evening. And I seem to be passing through the grief and approaching being ready to move on much faster this time. And it's been a regular feature of my practice that things shift and I'm experiencing less suffering around this or that. And that always scares me when that happens, because I imagine that there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Why am I suffering less? Does that mean that I don't care that much about this person or animal? Am I losing some capacity for feeling?
Just come here in this moment. I hear your love for Lovey. I can see your tender heart. There's nothing missing.
When this happens, ultimately what I do is I turn back. I guess I redouble my practice, because I trust it so deeply that I'm able to just kind of let go of the fear and uncertainty and trust that this is how it's supposed to go, and let go of that fear that I'm somehow losing something.
Yeah, getting it wrong in some way.
Yeah.
So I can really see that, and I can see how your practice holds you there, in that space of like, things shift, and does it mean I'm getting callous or not caring? But you only have to take a second with your tender heart, and you know you're caring. That's not gone at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Freedom is scary.
Yes, it is.
Freedom.
Actually, what I hear more often from Peg and Flint is enlightenment is boring.
Yeah.
It's drained of the drama. But yes.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. It's something I find so touching about just this kind of gathering across time and space and in the different places, and people bringing their tender hearts here, and all of us sharing that desire for more freedom and less suffering in ourselves and deeply in others too. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll end with the 4 practice principles. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Thank you, Ed, for being here and being our monitor and doing all that you do. And thank you to everyone for being here. And I'll hand back over to Ed. Thank you so much.